are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart and co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir.
Blake, did you fill out your bracket yet?
I did one, only because the man that gave me my opportunity in this business did one, and it's the only one I did. Bill King, who is pretty much, Joe, the has to be on the Mount Rushmore of what we do. He was the first person on Sirius XM. He did the recruiting where you called in the 1-800 or 1-900 numbers, and he would tell you about your team's recruiting class in the early 80s and early 90s. He did one. One of the fans did one for him, and he agreed on it. I have UConn.
That's your winner. You're going with UConn.
I'm going with UConn.
Former Rhode Island Rams head coach Dan Hurley. So I probably pick. I root for Dan Hurley because he was at Rhode Island when I was there. So I'll probably end up. I haven't done my bracket yet. Probably would end up picking UConn as well. I'm gonna
have a hot take. You ready?
Are we allowed to have basketball hot takes? Is that outside of our scope? Okay,
I think let's hear it. Well, first off, it's definitely out of my scope. Okay, let me just tell you, I enjoy March Madness. I do not keep it up with it good enough in the regular season. I will admit, I can't. I just can't do it. I can't.
It's too much nonsense going on. It's hard. I'll watch it. I used to watch it, but I don't anymore. Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Anything can happen.
I think Auburn's going to be very dangerous.
See, I like that thought because that's the one thing that stood out to me was how good Auburn was and all the teams that everyone thought was supposed to be competitive and good. They all shit the bed. They all played like crap at the final stretch. Like Houston's the big one for me. I thought that Houston was going to be the unstoppable team this year, but man, they got smoked by Iowa State of all teams. But no, I like the Auburn pick.
First off, you will relax on the Iowa State Cyclones.
Why?
The Cyclones are actually really good in basketball.
Yeah, I mean, historically, sometimes, and they I know that they're good this year, but I can't support Iowa State being
Our
good
good
at
brother's
anything.
going out there.
Who?
Josh Pate. He's going to his spring series or whatever he does.
He's going for the coaching
Iowa
interviews.
State. I told him to tell Matt Campbell to straighten out his freaking hat.
He's probably not going to do that.
If he's a winner, he will do it. And I know you probably just listened to that. All right. We got lots and lots we have to discuss here, Joe. I am glad we pushed this segment to today. Our 2024 breakout players, I would assume we will probably have one of the same ones. We will not tell. But I think that there's one that some may think that it's too chalky.
Okay.
But I do think that he may be the best defensive player in the entire SEC.
See, I'm wondering if you're picking a guy that might already be is it James Pierce Jr.? Are you going with? Okay. All right.
No.
And I'm curious who you have. I think I've got two obvious ones. One that our friend Elks is going to like. And then I've got one that's a really, really obnoxious deep pull. Like I can't not do this segment and not have a really deep pull, man. I watched too much goddamn film during the season, in the off season. And there's one guy that's been on my radar since week 3. That was a true freshman that was ridiculous this past year, and nobody talked about him. So I'm gonna bring him up when we get to that segment.
Does he reside in the state of Arizona?
He does not.
Okay. Does he reside in the state of Florida?
Nope. He could not have played for a more unimpactful team last year and this upcoming year.
Did he go in the portal? Is he on a new team?
No, he's still on the same team.
Is it a group of 5 team?
No, it's a Power 5 program. It's just a really bad one. You're probably not even going to know who I'm saying. Some of our Big Ten listeners should know who I bring up. And again, I don't want to spoil anything. I'll open with him. He'll be my first guy.
If you talk about a corner from Iowa that's white, I am banning you for the rest of the show.
He's not a he's a white defensive back, but
I will give you
corner.
credit. You did say that Cooper DeJean
Yes.
he was your breakout player last year. I'll give you that.
I have a very good track record of spotting some of these guys, man. I'm just saying when I speak on some of these deep pulls, people got to listen.
I will admit you're getting ever so closely though to having to eat a hat.
I still don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, do you want to pull it up? I mean,
no, we can move on. We don't have to worry about that.
I'm just saying it's going to be lovely. Don't think I have forgotten about this.
Again, we'll figure out a way that we can make it work.
In case you do not know, Joe DeLeone said this time last year that Jaden Daniels is a first-round pick. He'd eat a hat. I wonder what I could have got you to do if you would have made a bet on him being the Heisman Trophy winner. He's still better than Caleb Williams. All right, so we'll talk about some breakout players here, Joe, in tonight's segment. We'll talk about Fran Brown, the new head coach of Syracuse.
Yes, we were supposed to do this yesterday, and I wanted to spend the appropriate amount of time. I think that there is high expectations for Fran Brown, and there's also a high capability for early success. I don't think it's hot takey. I don't think it's out there to say that Fran Brown could win 7-8 games in his first year as the head coach.
I don't either. I think that they're a lot better than people will give them credit for. Okay. But I also believe that I'm not sold on them yet. I'm not sold on him yet. I don't think it's fair to say that that he can get to 8 wins when he's never coached ever or never been a head coach. I think there's difference when you've seen guys that have been head coaches. I'll give an example of for example, a lot of people were high on Billy Napier. A lot of people were high, obviously, when Brian Kelly went to Notre Dame and Cincinnati, Lincoln Riley at USC. You know what you pretty much can expect. We have no idea what to expect from Fran Brown.
Well, that's why I think that the argument to be made for Fran Brown to be a really good head coach early on is we're not relying on past performances at a school where it's not relatable. I think that if we pay more attention to the things that he's done this offseason, that to me is more reflective of somebody who clearly knows how to command a locker room, to motivate and rally his troops. That stuff's more important to me than if he's won games in the Sun Belt or not. If we paid more close attention to what Billy Napier
make fun of Sun Belt, Billy.
All I'm saying is that if we paid more attention to what he did, if we pay close attention to what coaches do in their first offseason, I think that to me is more reflective of early success rather than what they did at their previous destination.
We'll see. We'll definitely have a discussion on that. I do promise you. All right. Also, we're going to talk about something that I think it's interesting that you wanted to add into here. This team's sitting out of the NIT for college basketball signal what could come of bowl games in college football. I got to admit here, I'll just go ahead and tell you what I'm thinking. Absolutely not.
Okay, I understand that. And there's a reason why I want to bring this up, because I think it's really unique to the point that we've gotten to where transfer portal, NIL, all the typical buzzwords that we bring up had influence, I think, in this year, there being such a massive, massive grouping of teams saying that we don't care, we don't want to play in the NIT. I think that there at least could be a conversation to be had that come after maybe not the first year, but the second or third year of the college football playoff, that there is a potential for a team to just straight up say, we don't want to participate.
They're just making so much more money from football and bowl games than they are basketball teams in the NIT.
I'll save what I'm going to say later, but I think that the whole take that can be made here is that, say, what if there's a devastating amount of players that enter the portal for a G5 team? Like, that's where I think that this happens, where there's just not enough quality depth to go out there and play, that a team and a coach could just say, we don't have the bodies. We can't do this.
Well, they did do that. They did that during COVID, and they got ridiculed for it.
Well, because it's a very specific, different, unique circumstance that will never happen again.
Okay, well, first off, are you by any wood?
Okay.
Thanks. Don't ever say some crazy shit like that again. Thank you so
Okay.
much. You're wrong. Look, either Joe, here's the thought. You're either dead right about things or you're dead wrong. So let's go ahead and just knock on wood. And in that way, we're all good. Don't say
justified. That. Totally justified.
Completely, especially when you talk about quarterbacks. All right. So we got lots to discuss. I am really interested to get to this breakout player. I got one that I think that people are going to hammer me on because it might not be just I mean, a lot of people already know about him, but I do think he's going to break out. So we'll see. All right. Okay. Let's get to it. Everybody do us a favor by hitting the like and share to all those social media groups, share to all of those social media pages. You're liking it, watching us, listening to us on YouTube. Like, subscribe, notification bell wherever you listen to podcasts. Rate, review, and subscribe. All right, let's talk about our good friends over at betonline.ag. By the way, BetOnline's giving out a lot of money for this tournament bracket, so you need to get over there and bet. Use the promo code BELIEVE50. They'll know that Blake and Joe sent you on by here. Stay with us. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. We're back! You gotta love Joe when media people, SIDs, change up practice times on you. So we were supposed to be out there on Thursday, so I planned my week accordingly. I love it when they change plans on you. You got to absolutely love that. All right, let's get into it, Joe. So we did this last year. We were actually not too bad. I went back and looked at our segment here on some of our players.
Who did we have? I don't really even remember.
I
remember some of them.
Okay, well, our headline was Mikael Williams. Or not Mikael Williams.
No, it's Mikael Williams, the Georgia edge rusher. Yeah.
He was our breakout player. That wound up falling flat on their face. It's interesting. Guess who your boy had?
I know you had Malik Neighbors. I remember you had Malik Neighbors. I
had Malik Neighbors. And you know what's so funny about that? He might be the first wide receiver drafted in this year's draft.
He's not going to be the first wide receiver drafted in this year's draft. I can say that with absolute certainty.
You want to make a bet?
Sure. What do you want to bet? I'll eat two hats. He's not going to be the first wide receiver taken. It's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be the first.
You think that Daniel Jeremiah and Chris Sims are bullshitting when they're saying they're hearing he's going to be first off the board?
No, okay, so Chris Sims' ranking is based on his opinion, and he has been known to put out ridiculous rankings.
Do you think he's wrong?
I think that he's putting out the information, but at the same time, Daniel Jeremiah, and look, I love Daniel Jeremiah. He's come on my show before, one of those people that I look up to in the industry, but he is also well known as somebody who typically takes information from agents and from teams and puts it out there willingly because he knows that they'll give him information down the line. So I'm sure that there is a reason why he's pushing this narrative that some teams are trying to create a market. Guys like him are right usually, but they're also given information in order to be a mouthpiece.
A birdie was in my ear this morning and said that there's a massive discussion that Malik Neighbors' representation has been a part of him going to the Chargers.
I'm sure that could happen. But if Marvin Harrison Jr. is on the board,
Jim Harbaugh drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. after leaving Michigan the way that
it was in my mock draft. It was in my mock draft.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm going. But Malik Neighbors was one of mine. Nobody remembers one of yours, even though it was Cooper DeJean from Iowa, believe it or not, who also
I don't remember I said Cooper DeJean. That's interesting.
At the very end, you said he's the only white boy that will ever play corner. You were so excited about a white dude playing corner.
Okay.
You lost your ever living mind.
But the little problematic the way that was phrased, but let's I know what you're trying to say.
I mean, come on. Let's grow up and be serious here. All right.
Yeah.
So, Joe, I'm going to kick it over to you first. Who is somebody that you're thinking in 2024 can have a breakout year?
Yeah. So on the note of bringing up Cooper DeJean, this is my deep pull. The other two, I think, are a little bit more on the radar. We're already a little bit more familiar with two of these guys. Purdue this past year had a safety.
Oh, my God.
Purdue this past year had a safety in DeLeone Theineman, who was a freshman. He was one of the best freshmen in the country this past year, has typically been recognized as an all-freshman member. I believe he fit somewhere in on the Big Ten all-conference team as well. I love the way that this kid plays the game. For a true freshman, it's very hard to find defensive backs that have the reckless abandonment that he plays with. The type of guy that just goes a million miles per hour. He tackles really well. He comes downhill. He's somebody who can play in the box. He can play over the top. He's got that type of range. I think as we saw with Nick Scourton and Deion Burks, as they went in the portal and they found huge opportunities, I think somebody like DeLeone Theineman, who could build on the season that he had last year, be the best defensive back or safety in the Big Ten in 2024, and then go on a transfer to a bigger program. He is that gifted of a player. He's that special of a player. And I don't think enough people have even bothered to recognize what he capably could be.
I honestly thought you were going with Nyland Green.
No.
Why not?
I mean, he's a fine player. It's just that was not who.
He's been getting a lot of buzz in these charts. You know, him going to Purdue. I quite honestly don't see it. I got one, Joe, that so let me preface this. I don't know if this guy is going to be what people would label as a breakout player, but I do think he will be, considering where he went from as a freshman to where I think he's going to go this upcoming year in the SEC. Joe, I don't think that there's any question to me. It's got to be Anthony Hill Jr. from Texas. I think that when you see him versus teams like Alabama, okay, by the way, against guys like Booker, I mean, we're talking about NFL offensive lineman as a freshman. Joe, he was bullying a lot of people this year. I do think that he was out of position a lot, okay? I think that his hand placement is very bad. Basically, what you say about every defense or edge rusher, arguably all around the country, he's just too physically gifted. Mikael Williams, I think that we just were a little early on him, okay, in reference to his impact of the game.
Yeah.
But the thing with Anthony Hill Jr. is, if I actually needed him to come and rush in the inside, he's big enough, he's physical enough. I do think in a league like the SEC, okay, where it is paramount to get after the quarterback, I think he's going to be one of the top dudes. Now, the question becomes, how does he develop through the offseason? Joe, I will tell you, it's going to be give or take. Either he's going to be boom or bust here. And let me tell you why. His hand placement is horrendous. And I don't care what anybody tells me. He's not going to out physical people. Maybe he got away with it against Proctor at Alabama. That's one thing. He's not going to be able to out physical everybody in this league. Georgia is going to be the big game this year than Anthony Hill. We see what he's really made of because, look, they have a true new starter at left tackle and Ernest Green III. Good luck trying to block Anthony Hill. That is where I think I'm going to go first, is out in Texas.
Yeah, I really like the pick. I think that you mentioned a really key part of this. This is a really raw football player that they saw as a ridiculous athlete. His 0 to 60 speed, his acceleration is unbelievable, but they deployed him in the see ball, get ball type of a role, which is great for an athlete like him. And he didn't play a crazy amount of snaps. They just used him in the situations that they knew that they could get the most out of him. I think the production that we saw from him against Alabama is the eventual ceiling that we could get to, a multi-sack game type of a guy against weaker offensive tackles in the SEC. I love the Anthony Hill pick. I think that he could end up being one of the most disruptive defensive players in the country. I will say this, though. I'm not saying that he's not going to pan out and that Harold Perkins didn't pan out, because Harold Perkins still had a pretty good season. But if he is the type of athlete that if a defensive coordinator overthinks him and doesn't just utilize him in the fashion that he was built to be, which is go 100 miles an hour at the quarterback, if you try to get too cute with a guy like this, it'll slow them down. It'll limit their production. That's the only thing that I think could possibly hinder Anthony Hill Jr.
Perkins is, in my opinion, a massive product of being out of position because of a coordinator. I don't think that you'll have that issue at Texas. All right, who is your next breakout player in 2024?
Yeah, this is a guy who has not even stepped on the field for a game yet. I'm talking about Jeremiah Smith, who was the top recruit in the class this past year. Jeremiah Smith for Ohio State. But don't groan at this one, man. He is a tremendously gifted receiver prospect. It is very rare for receivers to be able to step in early on as freshmen. And I think that he is one of the rare exceptions where he's already built like he's 21 years old, like he's been playing for multiple years. I think the fact that they're losing Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Ibuka comes back, and I think he's going to be a really good football player. They've got some young up-and-comers as well. But if you listen to anybody talk within the Ohio State landscape, in the Big Ten landscape, they keep mentioning that if there is a freshman that has a ridiculous season, maybe goes for 900 yards or 1,000 yards and is a key part of a team's offensive success, it is going to be Jeremiah Smith, the wide receiver at Ohio State.
I agree with you. I think that Jeremiah Smith, okay, stay with me. I agree with you on one thing. Jeremiah Smith is a physical freak. Kid's going to be arguably one of the top top half selections in the NFL. I'm with you in 3 years. I just don't like
picking freshman.
I hate it. I absolutely, because here's what I also think. I think Will Howard's going to throw the ball around decent amount. You know what I really think is going to happen? I think they're going to run the football way too much for any one of those wide receivers in general to be breakout.
Yeah.
I just don't – I don't see a scenario where, because he's got Cornell Tate ahead of him, he's got so many dudes ahead of him, Joe, I don't know if that's going to be their outright game plan. Like, I think about a Mike Thomas as an example there, who everybody's like, oh, man, why is this guy not in the first round, but was a really good wide receiver? Well, they ran the football a lot. I mean, a hell of a lot. I just don't know if you can really ever expect a true freshman to come in here and get big time, because Cornell Tate wasn't bad.
Carnell Tate's fine. I think Carnell Tate, I got a little too excited on Carnell Tate early. He did contribute a little bit, but I just don't think that he's ever going to be the alpha dog in the room. I think that he's always going to be the secondary, third option. The reason why I think that Jeremiah Smith has this potential is because this is the alpha dog. Like, this is a guy who steps right in and could immediately command the share of targets if he's as ready as he's been portrayed. I think there's been a lot of hype on this kid, and I think it's completely justified.
You can't say the word. I was with you until you said it's justified. I mean, the kid was a freshman. And then you have another freshman coming in. Nothing's really justified.
Okay.
I mean, you can't – Joe, here's the thing. You can't continue to see massive leaps from players and say, we know who they are. Joe, the kid can gain 10 to 15 pounds and be a physical freak. There's nothing bigger, in my opinion. Here's my true opinion. There's no bigger leap for a player than year 1 to year 2 if they did not produce high in year 1. Okay, if they're just like, look, man, they were talented, you know what they got, but I do think there's something to be said. We'll see. I don't completely disagree with you. I just hate taking a freshman. All right. I got to go with another defensive player here. People are going to say I'm going to do this for the clicks, but I'm not. I'm very intrigued by Carmani McClain. at Colorado. Very, very intrigued.
All right, elaborate.
Okay, thank you. Joey didn't play a lot last year. And I thought a lot of people thought that he was going to come in and start and be a star like Travis Hunter, and it didn't pan out that way. Quite honestly, I thought he was going to go in the portal because him and DeLeone, it felt like that he didn't – like there was some form of separation with Cormani McClain and DeLeone. He wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing. But it's interesting. He doesn't go in the portal. He gets to a place where he's like, man, DeLeone's my dude. Okay. I just don't know if you don't have Colorado in a new Big 12 with an athlete like that doesn't make a huge leap. And because it's Colorado, no matter what he does, it's going to be manifested because he's playing DB for Colorado. I will say this. There are a couple former staffers from LSU that are on that staff right now. I said, don't BS me who's going to be the breakout player, okay, for you. All three of them said Cormani McClain.
Here's my only thing, and I'm not hating. Like okay. I like the pick. The kid was very highly recruited for a reason, and there was kind of this hope that he would maybe step on the field early, and he didn't really do that. Deion Sanders was very outward in speaking on McClain's demeanor, his preparation, all of that stuff. I'm not saying that he can't mature and improve this offseason. I'm hoping that he does. And as you talked about here, that's also one of the biggest things from year one to year two is you're used to being on campus. You're used to balancing things. That's usually a big maturing point for a lot of young athletes is how they act in that first offseason. I feel like Deion Sanders being so outwardly vocal about it, it either means that he holds the kid to a high standard and he's trying to motivate him, or he's just so frustrated by him and he's been so frustrating that he can't hold back talking about him. So if that would have been the case, I think Deion would have let him go. I think Deion would have told him to walk. That's a good point. That's a good point.
If Deion didn't see something in him, I really think he would walk or let him walk because I don't think Deion plays that game.
It's a very, very good point. That's my only and it's not like a huge concern. It's just like a sliver of a concern.
Like 25 pounds. I heard he's about 185, 190. And Joe, I got to be honest, when you have a kid that's going into college at 160 and gained 165 and gains that much weight,
yeah,
they're serious about something.
I mean, I watched his highlight tape when he was coming into the college before he committed to Colorado. I really liked it. So I'm on board with this. You never really know for sure what's happening behind the scenes.
I agree.
Especially when a coach is that vocal in press conferences. So I'm just kind of curious how that develops.
Here's my own field reason. I think that teams are going to shy away from Travis Hunter, which is going to give him more reps on the boundary. So he's going to see more action than anybody if he gets in the game. And to be honest with you, I don't think Deion's got a choice. I really don't think Deion's got a choice but to play this.
Okay, yeah, he needs to get on the field.
But with that being said, I do believe that there's a very clear scenario here. Joe, I just don't see teams going right at Travis Hunter. But I do see them, if they're going to shy away from him, either they're going to go in the slot or they're going to go at McClain and say, here you go, young buck. Let's see what you got.
If you got a 5-star, get him on the field. Like, even if there is some level that you're not totally sure if he's ready, you kind of have to let him go out and play at some point. I like the pick. I think it's a very unique one. I don't think that this is hey, let's talk about a Colorado kid. My last one.
Okay, here's your last one.
I'm throwing out there before you give me yours. I have brought this player up a number of times. I wanted to go with somebody who's a little bit older that doesn't necessarily just fit this, first or second year player conversation. I have spoken very highly of Deion Burks, the former Purdue wide receiver. He was projected at one point to be a top 100 pick in the 2024 NFL draft, and he did that with no production. They were a mess offensively. But this kid, every time he touched the rock, he had multiple 100-yard games. He's one of those guys who you give him the ball in space, he will kill you in space. He's a Tyreek Hill type of an athlete that I think can really eat up any separation that's given to him. Him landing at Oklahoma, a team that has thrown the ball as effectively as they've done, but lacked a guy like this to really take over in the passing game. I think that Deion Burks steps right in. You've got a young quarterback in Jackson Arnold that is going to be looking for a veteran to rely on, and Deion Burks is going to be exactly that guy. This is somebody who could be like Jameson Williams, completely explode onto the scene, have 1,200, 1,300 yards, and finish the year as one of the top receivers in the country.
All right. I just don't know enough about I'm not gonna argue with you on this because I don't know enough about the kid. Okay. Honestly, I just don't. But can I tell you something that I absolutely loathe about prospects?
What?
When they're in their money year and they fall flat on their face. Normally there's more of an underlying issue.
I think that's a little bit of a reach for somebody like this. Their offense was terrible, man. They didn't do a very good job of scheming
Name a guy that you thought was going to be a first-round pick coming in and ending his career as a junior, goes back to college and produces higher than what you thought he would. I got one that
you're talking about specifically as a receiver?
Yeah, because I got one that I ultimately remember. Remember, we were in 2022, we went in thinking that Kayshon Boutte might be the first wide receiver off the board, and he completely fell flat on his face. It was Malik Neighbors that wind up being the dude. I just don't like it when guys are in their money year and they fall flat on their face, my guy.
Well,
but
the thing is with him though is he didn't really play that much until this recent year. Like this was his first. He is going to be a senior in terms of he's a red shirt. He's going to be a red shirt junior, so he's only really played 2 seasons of on-field action. So
that's fair.
I think he's unique where he was at just a bad offensive team and that he was very overshadowed.
All right, that's fair. Let me tell you my last one here.
Okay.
I actually got some honorable mentions if we want to look at those, but in case we don't, okay. I'm going with C.J. Allen, the inside backer from Georgia. I think that Joe, I actually talked about him, and if you remember this, very early last offseason, because we were talking about their spring game. And I said, I don't know who this C.J. Allen kid is, but that dude is a freaking animal. Okay. Maybe it was their spring game. Maybe I don't completely remember. Maybe it was a scrimmage or practice. I can't necessarily remember. Dude, he's the reason that Dumas Johnson goes bye-bye. Right. And so if you run him out, what are you supposed to be? Now, I remember vividly the game that he had against Ole Miss. I think he had like 9 tackles, was his career high.
Yep.
I look at the last game versus Florida State, how good he was. Thought he had a really bad game versus Bama. Okay, thought he missed a couple of tackles, but everybody was missing tackles in that game. But I went back and looked at our good friend Brooks Austin's film breakdown of him. He might be the most violent inside linebacker, not only in the conference. He might be the most violent linebacker in the country. I think instinctively he reminds me of a lot of Devin White from the running game. I do think he's got to get better in coverage. But if you're going to put him in the box, which is obviously where he's going to be, Joe, he's going to be downhill, and good luck trying to run the football with him there. I do think that he's a problem, and I got to be real with you. There are 5 seniors or classroom seniors. Some of them are redshirted juniors. 5 seniors on this Georgia defensive line. I think that they get a lot more penetration this year to let their backers flow. And I do think that they do some different combo things along their defensive line to let a guy like C.J. Allen absolutely rake. Final thing with C.J. Allen that I will say that I'm worried about. I think there were times that he was okay in coverage. I thought there were times he was completely out of position in coverage, which you're going to have to expect from a young player. The problem is sometimes, Joe, when you're a linebacker and you're struggling in coverage early, you don't normally fix it, right? Like there's normally something wrong there. But I just think because Georgia is going to be that team that I think is going to be the number 1 seed coming out of all of this, an expanded playoff, it's going to be led by what C.J. Allen, that front 7 is doing at Georgia. But I'm going to split this one, okay? I need you to listen to me. I do think that there's going to be somebody along that offense at Georgia regardless of who it is going to absolutely break out. Joe, have you looked at their wide receiver room by chance?
I have very briefly. They brought in some guys, man.
Joe, I can I give you a hot take here?
Yeah.
I don't know if they're not top 3 in the country at wide receiver.
I like, no one talked about them, man. And Colby Young, man. I really like Colby Young.
And Landon Humphreys. By the way, they got Dom Lovett in the last year's transfer portal. They have Rod Thomas. And then the ultimate secret weapon, Dylan Bell.
Yeah, you love Dylan Bell.
Oh, God, do I?
Look, to just round out the thought here on CJ Allen, we have talked a ton on this show about how Georgia has ridiculous depth because of how effectively they've recruited and then kept most of those guys there. CJ Allen was good enough when Jamon Dumas-Johnson got hurt that he was the next man up amongst all the other guys.
It. And you know what's interesting? When he came in, Joe, we're talking about him going up against a Lane Kiffin offense. It's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to be thrown into.
Yeah, I said this with Dylan Thieneman. Reckless abandonment for a freshman. 1,000,000 miles an hour. I would rather watch you go 100 miles an hour and make mistakes like you did against Bama as a young player than to watch you hesitate and go slow. I love guys that play with this intensity, this mentality. And we know that Georgia has developed linebackers at a very high clip. I like this pick. This is a really, really strong pick. This is somebody who could end up being an all-conference player at the end of the season with no questions asked.
Can I give you my honorable mention?
Yeah, go for it.
Will Howard, Ohio State.
Get out of here, please. Stop it. If they do well, it's going to be because he has a J.J. McCarthy-like season.
I disagree. I think they're too talented. Joe, he's got more weapons in his backfield than he's ever had at any position at any given moment at Kansas State.
So did Michigan. They had 2 really good running backs and a really good tight end, and you know what they did? They ran the ball. I think Will Howard's fine. I've said this before.
Here's the problem.
I'm not saying Will Howard is bad. I'm just saying
okay. Well, then Jeremiah Smith's not going to have a breakout season if Will Howard can't do it. Sorry to tell you, but
I don't think those things are mutually exclusive.
Who's throwing in the ball? What
would you define as a breakout season for Will Howard?
30 to 35 touchdown passes. The biggest number that I'm looking at is not necessarily the touchdowns. It's where he is going to reduce in the interceptions. Joe, he had 30 plus touchdowns last year.
I think you'll be fine, but I don't think that negatively.
You look at kids at quarterback as prospects. You got to look at them.
I don't. And wait. I have said this before. The problem is the wording that I use and the things that I say. It's overly assumed that I'm being overly critical of a player. It's always assumed that I'm saying that this kid sucks when I make a comment because nobody wants to listen to my words. They want to listen to the first thing in the way that I say it. The thing with Will Howard is that I think that he's fine. I think he's a strong player. I think he's got a big frame. I think he's a slight upgrade over Kyle McCord. He's a good athlete. But I have not really seen anything from him that makes me get excited and think that this is a kid who's going to explode and be a top 5 quarterback in the country at the end of the season when it's all said and done. He just doesn't do it for me. The team that he had around him at Kansas State was not as bad as some people would like to make it out to be. And I think it's concerning that Avery Johnson looked so natural and so freaking good after he took over compared to when Will Howard made a lot of easy things look hard. A lot of their bad games were because of the way that he played.
All right, let me end this guy, Mark, right quick, because he's been on everything that I do. Hey, Mark, buddy, the first person I said was from the University of Texas. Just because you drive up a jack truck and you have a small penis doesn't mean that you can come into these shows and talk shit. I literally said Anthony Hill Jr., and you sat there on the sidelines and didn't say shit. The ultimate Texas beta move that most of you Texas fans do sometimes. That's why we play this. We're back. And you're really not. So if you're going to continue to comment on all of our stuff, that's fine. But everything that I say, you get mad at because I said that you're not gonna win the SEC in year one. Either grow up or block us. Regardless of whichever you want to do, stop being a casual, little jacked up Trump having small penis looking asshole, because that's what you've been the entire time, the last 3 weeks that you've commented on our stuff. I have my team in the background saying, Mr. Blake, should we block him? And I say no. But when you make comments, okay, like this, he's 63rd in the country in completion percentage. What the fuck do you think that the Heisman Trophy winner did a year ago?
Yeah, I'm not going to put any faith in the completion percentage argument. I mean, that there's a huge difference in scheme, situation, all that stuff.
But it's a stupid fucking argument when you say he's got 60% completion. What the fuck do you think Quinn Ewers is going to do? Because let me tell you what Quinn Ewers is going to do. His vagina is going to hurt by week 7, and he's going to get kicked out of a game because he just always continues to get hurt. And Joe, all you're going to continue to see here is an Arch Manning run Texas football team.
Yeah, I mean, Quinn Ewers in his 2022 at a 58% completion percentage, and then he went up to 69%.
Fucking crazy. Where did they end their season?
What do you mean? Where did
they end their season?
In the national championship. Or in the playoff. In the playoff. Yeah.
Blues Clues. We just got a letter. Wonder who it's from. It's that you don't know football.
That might be one of your best rants. Last honorable mention before we move on. Zachariah Branch. No additional argument needed. Just throwing him in there. I put him in the graphic.
Oh, so you're doing that so you can put him in the show graphic?
No, he was in the show graphic. So like
do you want to expand on it? You got 5 seconds.
He is a spark plug. And he's going to be the best receiver on that team. You know, most of their receiving production has moved on.
You know you have 2 small kids when you just do a Blues Clues reference.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. That was why that was one of your best rants, because
No, he comments on everything. He probably thinks I'm really mad. No one really cares about him, but I got people in my ear telling me that Mark's back, Mr. Blake.
I didn't even know that. I didn't leave the comments closed for the most part. I didn't even know that Mark was.
I know. I don't do it either. That's Joe. If you in our production, there's a reason why we have 97 comments right now. I don't open it. But today we had to. Okay. Let's get to a quick break. Fran Brown, first year expectations out of the break. All right, we'll see you in a second. Stay with us.
Ruffino and Joe Show is brought to you by Home Field Apparel, which is the best, without a doubt, premium collegiate apparel brand that is out there. They have over 150 different colleges that you can choose from, whether you're an Illinois fan or a Rutgers fan, maybe you're an LSU fan like Blake, or maybe you're an Alabama fan. Whatever it is, even Idaho, they have so many different designs for so many different football programs that I can guarantee you're going to find some great stuff to help root for your favorite team. I've already gotten my Notre Dame stuff. Blake has his LSU stuff. Make sure you head on over to homefieldapparel.com to check out your team's collection of clothing apparel that they have on the website. And when you do so, when you check out, make sure you use promo code Ruffino Joe to get 15% off your order. That is RUFFINO Ruffino Joe. Head on over to homefieldapparel.com and get your college gear today.
The only thing good in Texas is Walker, Texas Ranger. All right. So, Joe, we've been continuously – you've never seen – you're probably too young for Walker, Texas Ranger, aren't you?
I've seen it, but I'm not going to be able to recall any of it. But I've seen it.
Do you know who Trevette is?
No. No.
I literally have failed you as a co-host.
I'm 6 years younger than you. I don't know what you've –
I have failed you as a co-host. Here's what I want you to do. Do you have an HBO account, or what's it called, Max Original account?
I do. I'm not going to watch Texas.
I'm not telling you to do that. I'm going to give you 3 movies that you have to watch by Sunday.
That's not going to happen. 3 movies. I don't have time for 3 movies. What are you going to do in my free time?
You have to watch all 3 of the original real-life Ninja Turtles movies.
Oh, I've seen all 3 of those.
Okay, well, then
those are some of my 3 favorite movies.
Okay, well, I'm going to quiz you at the end of the week. I'm going to quiz you on
Okay.
Sundays.
I'm not rewatching them. I'm too busy chasing that bag, Blake. Man, I don't have time for movies like that.
Jesus Christ. I'm not even going to open the segment. I'm not even going to open the segment like this. I would say that Fran Brown, I mean, he went and got him a bag. But let's talk about this, Joe. We continue on our series of first-year expectations for first-year head coaches. I thought the coaching world took him, or at least Georgia took a massive hit when Fran Brown left Georgia, goes to Syracuse. I think it was one of the sneakiest best hires. In all of this was Fran Brown going to Syracuse. I do, though, even though I think we might need to limit some expectations. But he hired a good coordinator, hired some good coordinators. He brings in Will Howard, or not Will Howard. He brings in Kyle McCord. Just got done talking about Will Howard. What do you think about Fran Brown in year one, even though they actually do have a pretty favorable schedule up there in the Qs?
I said this when he was hired. I love the decision by a program like Syracuse to acknowledge that somebody like Fran Brown is an up-and-comer, that he is somebody who probably could have just stayed on Georgia's coaching staff and continued to work his way up, and then eventually taken a much bigger job than this one. But Syracuse realizes, let's hire this guy a couple of years early. Let's get after him a little bit early, and then we can reap the rewards in his first 3 years as a head coach. There might be some growing pains, but we have heard and understand that there is tremendous upside for a guy like this. And Fran Brown has knocked his situation out of the park. He was able to recruit a quarterback who needs a fresh start in Kyle McCord, who I think is redeemable. If you think he was bad or whatever, I understand that. He was very inconsistent, and I even have criticized him myself, but he is still a redeemable quarterback. They also have been aggressive in adding guys like Fadil Diggs, Yazid Haynes, Isaiah Hastings. They have acquired and moved on a lot of SEC talent, as well as focusing recruiting on the New Jersey, New York, Northeast area to create an identity where they are. I think it's reminiscent to what we saw, and I need to be perfectly clear here. Okay. I'm not saying that this is where they're going to get to, but I think it is a Walmart version of what Dan Lanning did early on at Oregon, where Dan Lanning understood that the only way I'm going to compete and be the best in my conference is if I go and get as many SEC guys as possible, as many big body guys as possible, physical football players, former 5-star, 4-star guys that maybe didn't pan out, and I develop them, we're going to be good in a couple of years. And I think that Fran Brown's going to hit the ground running in this upcoming season because he was able to capitalize on some of these guys not getting on the field early.
You know they're gonna absolutely kill you in the chat when you talk about Dan Lanning and Fran Brown in the same.
They're okay. They both come from a Georgia coaching staff. They both share similar philosophies in roster building. I'm not saying that they're going to go to the college football playoff. I'm just saying that could they be one of the better teams in the ACC? Could they be a top 4 team in the ACC? I think it's very doable for them to do in the first year.
Here's my thing with Fran Brown. Okay, Joe, I really stay with me here because what I'm going to say is going to really degrade him in a way. Okay, but it really doesn't. If Fran Brown would not have made the coordinator hires that he made, I would have been really worried for him. Because you're talking about a position coach that doesn't have a lot of play calling experience. We would have had the same conversations with guys like Orgeron in the past. Guy doesn't call plays. He's a position coach. But he goes out and gets E-Rob, right, from Texas A&M, who built the ridiculous class and the outright ridiculous, just quite honestly, recruiting classes at Texas A&M. Then he goes and gets Jeff Nixon, who's going to coach running backs as his OC. That is where I think they have success because now you have 2 elite recruiters that actually can call plays. E-Rob called it at Texas A&M, or helped call it at A&M, was the interim coach, interim head coach when Jimbo got fired, and you have Jeff Nixon here. Here's the thing, too. He has surrounded himself by so many elite guys in recruiting. Like you got James Villano, okay, who a lot of people in the industry think is going to be one of the better hires and additions, even though he's going to be on special teams because of what he does in development. They got Ross Douglas too. Ross is a guy that I've heard and talked to actually from the Boston area, believe it or not. It's been with the Patriots. That a lot of people are going to be a passing game coordinator. Imagine the Cortez Hankton of the world, who is now the LSU passing coordinator. I'm just using LSU because it obviously I'm right here. But I think he's on that same track and trajectory. I think it's very interesting who everyone is that he brought around him. I think that is his ultimate success because he can go out there and recruit too. Now, you talked about earlier, or even when we talked about this when he was hired, the favorable schedule. Here's the thing with me with Fran Brown as of right now, before I see more in spring and all this kind of stuff. I'm just always skeptical with a position coach becoming a head coach, regardless of who it is. Okay, like I legitimately lived it. Like myself, as a fan of LSU, lived it. Joe, I do think 8-9 wins could be plausible, but I do think that that may be their ceiling. And I think that that's fair.
Oh, yeah. Look, I'm not going to sit here and pound the table and say that this guy's going to win 10 games in year one. That
Okay,
I would be out of my goddamn mind. No, I say it again.
You made it feel that way.
Again, there's always a misperception on what I'm saying and what I mean.
Compare the dude to Dan Lanning and you and me not feel as if that you're saying 9-10 wins here.
Again, I to be clear, it's the Walmart version. Okay, this is
Dr. Pibb is pretty good.
I love Mr. Pibb, man. We talked about this.
Dr. Pibb,
Mr. Pibb, damn it.
Pibb.
I think 8 wins is on the table, and these are, I could only find on their schedule like 3 tough games. They have a ridiculously easy schedule that they've been handed. These are the 3 hardest games that I noticed. NC State, which they're probably going to lose. Virginia Tech, who's supposed to be better this upcoming year and showed some good things.
We would hope.
And Miami. The rest of their schedule is like all of the bottom feeders of the conference.
Well, they're a bottom feeder of the conference.
They have been, and I think that they're good enough. The biggest thing here is that they added athletes that don't typically play in the ACC, and they're one of the few teams that has a quarterback who's played in high-pressure situations and high-pressure games. There's not a lot of situations where Kyle McCord is going to be backed up against a wall. He's not going to be in an environment like the Big House or like Penn State.
With 2 picks, it's bad, but it's not as bad as if it would be at Ohio State. I agree.
Exactly my point. I just 8 wins feels like a really good number, and I think that we're going to be talking about Syracuse and Fran Brown at the end of the season as, a team that's going to continue to take some huge steps.
That's fair. I do see in my sleeper playoff team, and we probably need to talk about them at some point, Joe, is the Miami Hurricanes. I'm with you on a lot of things that you said. Could they be this year's Louisville? Because remember last year, Braum comes in, but Braum had a lot of head coaching experience. But, Joe, I got to admit now, there was a team in the ACC. Somebody said that, they're favoring a little bit here. Somebody said that they could make a run. I'm just saying, when we did first-year expectations last year, okay, of coaches that could be knocking on the door of a playoff, we picked Louisville. All I'm saying here is we've seen it a couple of times here in the ACC. Mac Brown was on the cusp. I think he had a 10-win season when he first came out of the gate. So we'll have to wait and see. But I do like Fran Brown a lot.
Yeah, I also will go as far as to say I wouldn't be shocked if Fran Brown is not a guy who's brought up for openings at the end of the season, who might not get hired away, but is going to be always like a 3rd or a 4th guy on a list for a bigger job, and then everyone's going to be like, oh, it's too soon for him. I think there's a lot of potential for that.
Very much well could be. The thing, and I see this from Andrew inside the chat, he says that Cristobal is the worst coach in the ACC.
Agreed. That's actually probably.
I mean, he's still just right at above 500.
He's one of the best. He's probably the best recruiter in the conference, but he's probably the worst in-game decision maker because of how much he's messed up. Yeah.
without question. But the problem though is, and I think we get tempted. He's not going to be worse than Jimbo in game.
No.
Right.
I would hope that after what happened last year, that he takes some of that decision making off
he
his
beat
plate.
Jimbo this year.
Right. That's all the evidence we need.
That's all the evidence we need. So, oh, by the way, he's got Cam Ward, man. I'm just telling you, man, we're gonna have to talk about this Miami Hurricane team. I'm telling you, I'm so fired up for them. I'm really excited because can I tell you something? Of all the years that everybody tried to say that they're back, I got to admit something. I finally think that we got to look at them and say, man, this could be the year. All the other ones, it's like, yeah, you're not going to, like you still suck. I don't know about this one, Joe. This one feels a little bit different.
If there's a team in the state of Florida that is going to be this year's Florida State, it's not Florida, it's Miami.
Oh, God, they're going to fire their coach by week 7. I mean,
some people have tried to paint that argument. Some people have tried to paint it's the third year. Maybe things will turn around. There's some positives, and no.
You look at him completely different if some of those games like Florida State that they could have won, okay? And you look at a game like maybe obviously Georgia Tech. Like if Georgia Tech doesn't happen again, then what?
Yeah. It would be
what's crazy, Joe? We would have been in halfway through the season. We'd be like, "Hey, man, Miami might be back. They're undefeated," and so it's just crazy. All right, I know we didn't leave any time for this NIT thing, but you want to just take the segment away here?
What do you mean? Take it not do it, or you're saying?
No, I'm just saying. Say what you think. I mean, I just don't. I mean, we don't have enough time, or if you want to push it, it doesn't matter.
We can punt on it because what am I gonna? I'm gonna talk stream of consciousness for 30 seconds, and then we're gonna close the show out.
Yeah, you kind of remind me of what I think a conversation with Sunshine from Remember the Titans would be like.
Sure.
Speaking straight Zen, peace, brother, peace. By the way, I got to admit, I'm going to say this tonight at 7. I am on a journey to lose. Let me not say the weight.
Okay. Yeah, I'd never put it out there because it makes it more difficult if that.
But I got to admit, this carnivore diet, dude, it's insane. It's insane, man. It's so great.
Well, you say that now until you eventually get sick of eating as much meat. I'm all on your side and supporting. I think you're gonna crush it.
Hate green beans. Stop making.
Oh, so that's why you just don't want to eat vegetables. So you found
I finally found a loophole.
You're supposed to still eat fruit and shit, right? When you do that, you're not supposed to just only eat.
Like every week at the end of the week, you're supposed to. So
I'm rooting for you.
Or you can just do 4 large scoops of peanut butter, which I love freaking peanut butter.
That's not fruit. That's not. That's pure fat. That's not fruit.
Well, that's the thing in the carnivore diet. You need the trans fats. All right. We'll see y'all again on Wednesday. Y'all have a good night. See ya. Peace.